We are live. And 3, 2, 1.
Democrats run strong in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district. Students prepare to walk out all day to protest gun violence. And President Trump says some stuff about a space force or something. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. So today, I am interested in talking about what's happening with this student walkout rather than awkwardly staring at the camera for weird periods of time. I'm actually going to talk about what's going on in the news. Man, sometimes you're just off. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at LegalZoom. LegalZoom is marking National Small Business Month. And whether you're just starting out or you already have a business, there's a lot you can take advantage of right now. So I've known about LegalZoom for literally years. It was one of the ways that I would file documents, do wills and trusts from the time when I was a younger human. But now, LegalZoom has actually expanded its business offerings. Go to LegalZoom.com/startup during March, and you can download your free business startup kit. You get a ton of great information. You can find out how to maximize your business deductibles under the new tax laws. Plus, you'll get great discounts. Your kit includes special deals from LegalZoom, along with offers from their service partners, so you can save a bunch of money financing, marketing, and operating your business. LegalZoom is not, in fact, a law firm, but they do know that you need to tap into the right resources to run a successful business, and that's why they have their business startup kit. They even have people who are actually available to answer your questions as well. So it's not just a list of forums. You also have people who you can consult with. Go to LegalZoom.com/startup and download your free business startup kit today. We have a startup here at Daily Wire. LegalZoom is invaluable for other people who are trying to do what we have done. They make it a lot cheaper. It means you don't have to work through these really expensive law firms, spend $500 an hour just to get a contract done. LegalZoom.com/startup. There is no obligation, just free business resources, and the offer is only available in March. So if you're listening after that, you can still enjoy special savings by using code BEN when you check out at LegalZoom.com. That's LegalZoom.com, where life meets legal. Again, use that special code BEN when you check out and you enjoy special savings, and it's only available in March. So we're already nearing the middle of the month, so check it out there. It's LegalZoom.com and use that promo code BEN. Again, these folks, I mean, there's a reason they've been top in the business for literally more than a decade at this point. Check it out, LegalZoom.com, and use promo code BEN. All right, so a couple of big news stories out the gate today. So we will get to what happened in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district last night, because that actually, I have a lot of notes on that. But we begin today with this massive walkout that's happening at supposedly 2,500 schools all over America, where a bunch of kids, astroturfed by people who organized the Women's March, have decided to walk out of school for 17 minutes to honor the victims at the Parkland school shooting, the victims at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And of course, what this really is not a call for an agenda, right? It's not actually an agenda-driven march, right? We actually don't know what they want. And if you read what the Women's March say they are marching for, nobody agrees with their actual agenda. I'll get to their actual agenda in a second. But what it really is about having a lot of pictures of a lot of young people standing around and saying that they hate gun violence so that a bunch of leftist politicians can claim that they are standing with the children in pushing for vast gun confiscation regimes. That's what this is all about. And that's essentially what the New York Times admits in their editorial today. They say the children should lead us, to which I say, fine, then let the children take over your editorial board. They can't do a worse job than you have. Why don't you just let the kids run all your op-eds? And they can decide whether they want to run op-eds on whether homework is necessary or not. It's really funny. All the adults at the New York Times, who are all in their 50s, they always talk about how wonderful and genius these 17-year-olds are, but I don't see them giving up their jobs anytime soon to high school juniors who are attending Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. But here's what they write in their editorial. They say, adults are supposed to take care of children, not only keep them safe, but make them feel safe. Weird. I don't hear this from the New York Times on issues like abortion, that adults are supposed to take care of children. I don't hear about them with regard to single motherhood. That line seems to go out the window. But now, of course, adults are supposed to take care of children, according to the New York Times, not by defending kids with guns, but by letting kids decide policy, which is a weird way of protecting them. They say schools are essentially an extension of the home, in that sense, providing sanctuaries of learning, of nurturing and care. But after years of attacks by people with weapons of war, students cannot feel safe and are demanding that adults end years of complacence and act. Okay, first of all, it is these school shootings are actually on the decline, not on the uptick, statistically speaking. And your chances of being killed in a school shooting are significantly worse than your chances of being killed in virtually any other sort of accident in the United States. And these are acts of terror, really. Say they're not asking for their schools to become armed garrisons. Well, some would like for there to be more armed guards. They say rather they want those weapons to be brought under control. I like how the New York Times has a direct link into the minds of all young people. It's amazing. It's like Rousseau's general will. They just look at young people and they magically know that all of Chuck Schumer's proposals on gun control have embedded themselves in the minds of young folks. But what does this smack of? It smacks of the New York Times, basically taking a child, putting the child out front and saying, this child demands that you do what I say you do. Are you going to say no to this very cute child? It's like the Pinky and the Brain episode where they decide to take over the world by becoming small children with big puppy eyes, right? The way to actually become leaders is to show something really cute. Well, that's what the New York Times is basically doing here. They say, at Stoneman Douglas Jr., Florence Yared said at the Florida State Capitol late last month, you adults have failed us by not creating a safer place for your children to go to school. So we, the next generation, will not fail our own kids. We will make this change happen. If not today, then tomorrow. If not tomorrow, next year. Take it from us. You created a mess with us, but we will make this world safer for our children. Again, I understand that this girl went through something absolutely horrible, but the world is significantly safer for kids growing up today than it has been at any time, literally in human history. And if she thinks that she's going to be able to ram through gun control because something bad happened to her, I have another thing coming for her. She says, with Wednesday's demonstration and their March for Our Lives movement on March 24th in Washington, young voices are being heard. How will the nation's adult respond? Hopefully by amplifying their demand. Never again. So first of all, I love the use of the Holocaust terminology, never again, to describe what are rare instances of horrific terrorism. Not quite the same thing, but as opposed to, like an organized government effort to slaughter 6 million Jews, not quite the same thing as people who being allowed to own guns because it is their right to do so, and then a couple of bad people going and doing really horrific things with those guns. Not quite the same thing as the Holocaust, but all right. And then they quote a bunch of high school juniors, right? And we're supposed to believe that all of these high schoolers are the wisest and greatest among us. Now, again, tragedy does not confer expertise. I've said this about Jimmy Kimmel and his son. Right? Just because something bad happened to you in your life does not make you an expert on the underlying issue. Right? Jimmy Kimmel had a surgeon perform the surgery on his son. He didn't perform the surgery himself because he understands that just because he was suffering doesn't mean that expertise goes out the window. The same holds true of gun control. Just because you witnessed something awful happen at your school does not mean you know what you are talking about when it comes to the best public policy to stop such shootings. But the New York Times, again, they want to use these kids as political human shields. And so here is what they turn over their editorial page to these kids. And then they quote them, right? Alfonso Calderon Jr. No kid should be afraid to go to school. No kid should be afraid to walk outside. And no kid should have to worry about being shot. Now, that's why I'm marching. Okay, no kid should have to worry about leukemia. No kid should have to worry about disease. No kid should have to worry about murder. No kid should have to worry about anything terrible. That's true. I mean, that would be great. Unfortunately, we live in a world where there are evil people. The question is, how do you stop them? We all want to stop those evil people. Okay, how about Ali Sheehy? Not Ali Sheedy, right? Ali Sheehy. The children, senior in high school, the children you pissed off will not forget this in the voting booth. Don't doubt the power of the younger generation because we are a force to be reckoned with. Okay, every young generation says this. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But again, the idea that everybody who's young is solidly behind a particular gun proposal is just not true by polling. Emma Gonzalez is one of the people who's been featured the most in the media, and subsequently the media have been just enamored of her Twitter followers because she has gotten this big Twitter bump. She went from like nothing to 1.1 million because she was featured on Ellen and a bunch of other shows. So they quote her, maybe the adults have gotten used to saying it is what it is. But if us students have learned anything, first of all, if we students have learned anything, Emma, right? Maybe you should learn some grammar. But if us students have learned anything, it's that if you don't study, you will fail. You should study grammar or you'll fail. And in this case, if you actively do nothing, people continually end up dead. So it's time to start doing something. We are going to be the kids you read about in textbooks. Not because we're going to be another statistic about mass shooting in America, but because we are going to be the last mass shooting. I fervently wish that this were true. I fervently hope that this is true. But just because we all want to stop mass shootings doesn't mean I agree with Emma Gonzalez's prescription. I mean, all of this is basically Bernie Sanders-style politics. I've ripped on Bernie Sanders' Twitter account for a long time because Bernie Sanders' Twitter account is largely Bernie Sanders just saying things like, there are rich people and there are poor people. The world should not be like this. And so, well, okay, fine, what you can do about it. Right? And this is the same thing. There shouldn't be shootings of children. Yes, we all agree. Now, your proposal, please. And Jacqueline Corin, Jr. High schools shouldn't be hashtags every other day. Jose Iglesias, Sr. More prayer, Jesus, God, and compassion won't bring back the victims that sadly lost their lives. I'm not sure anyone was making the contention that more God was going to bring back children who died. It won't bring back the sense of security that my fellow peers and I lost. The only way to get that back is through gun control, starting now. Weird, because there is significant gun control all over Chicago, and people don't feel particularly secure. Okay, gun control doesn't make people feel secure. Lack of being shot makes people feel secure. The only reason that you would embrace gun control over, for example, more armed security guards is for political reasons. So make an argument. I love this. Madison Leal. The children will become leaders as the leaders have become children. I don't even know what that means. Again, it's always selective. So the New York Times did turn over one of the editorials on their editorial page to a sophomore at Randolph High School, a junior at Toms River North High School, and a senior at Marlboro High School, all in New Jersey. Again, this is just political human shield stuff, right? They're going to bring out a bunch of young kids and then suggest these kids know something better because they are kids, which is weird. And they write, we are Generation Z. This is in the New York Times. The generation after millennials. We outnumber them by nearly 1 million and maybe the largest cohort of future American spenders since the baby boomers. We have more than 30 billion in spending power and wield enormous influence in family spending. Our spending power will only increase as we begin to earn our own wages. We will flex our muscles at the ballot box too. Many high school seniors will cast their first ballots this November. And in 2020, a majority of today's high school students will most likely be able to vote in their first presidential election. Let us remind politicians like Donald Trump, Paul Ryan, and Mitch McConnell, who accept donations from the NRA and oppose efforts to restrict gun purchases, that we are the future leaders and voters of this country. Well, I'm sure that some of you are and some of you are not. I mean, there are lots of people who vote. There are lots of people who don't vote. There are lots of people who lead. There are lots of people who don't. There are lots of people who are young who will join the NRA. There are lots of people who won't. Let us remind corporations like FedEx that provide discounts to NRA members that we are their future customers. Again, this is not an argument. This is a moral appeal, right? It's an emotional appeal. Now, the reason that I'm reading all of this from the New York Times is to demonstrate that they're rather selective in the folks that they choose to feature. Because there are a lot of young listeners to the Ben Shapiro Show. There are a lot of young people who listen to the show. Something like 70 to 75% of our audience is under the age of 35. We have a disproportionately young audience, of which we're very proud. And we have tons and tons of high schoolers who listen to this show. And I've been getting overwhelmingly one message from my emailers over the last 2 weeks. And I mean this. I'm talking about scores of emails. I'm talking about probably more than 100 emails from high schoolers over the last week alone. And today, many, many more after I wrote this piece, who are saying that they are upset with the media coverage of this mass walkout and asking for advice on how to deal with it. I've gotten lots and lots of emails from these folks. So here are some of the emails. And I want to read the emails from some of these students who are not going to be featured in the New York Times. I want to read some of the emails from these students who are not going to be shown on network news tonight. I want to read the emails from some of the students who are going to be ignored and castigated and told that they are worse human beings because they disagree with gun control. I want to give them a voice because the rest of the media certainly are not giving these kids a voice. And I am speaking with these kids, I promise you, far more often than the editorial board of the New York Times is. The editorial of the New York Times hasn't talked to a person under the age of 40, except for like this last couple days in years. I'm talking to people under the age of 20 every single day. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the things that they've been sending to me and let them speak. Okay, so I'm going to turn over my show to them in just 1 second. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Wondery's new show, This Is War. Okay, so there's a new podcast out there from Wondery Podcast Network. It's called This Is War, and it is sharing the personal stories from brave men and women who serve in our armed forces. These are firsthand accounts of what it's like to fight and survive combat in Afghanistan, in Iraq, what it's like to protect our freedom, the bonds that are formed, the psychological toll it takes on people to fight, and what it is like to return home, trying to figure out how you fit in and how you heal the physical and emotional wounds from time in combat. It's a really moving podcast. It is a deeply effective and necessary podcast. In the first episode, we meet a guy named Ian Mearns, and a month before his senior year in high school, he joined the Marines, and he signed up for the military. And that was August of 2001. Obviously, life changed very much the next month. So if you want to hear his story, go over to This Is War on Apple Podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, This Is War is available. Check out This Is War, hit the subscribe button, or visit wondery.fm/Ben. That's wonder with a Y.fm/Ben. Subscribe, listen. It's really worth your time. And again, it'll give you just a greater appreciation for what it is that that our heroes do on a daily basis. Check it out, Wondery's This Is War podcast. Totally worth the subscribe. Alrighty, so now I want to read some of the emails that I've been getting from high schoolers all over the country who are deeply upset and deeply angry that there are so many people who are castigating them as bad people because they disagree. I mean, I'm looking at just in the last hour. In the last hour, I've received 15 separate emails in 1 hour before the show from various high school students who are asking about what they should do during these walkouts because they're frustrated and they're upset. They feel like they're being ignored. Here's a high school junior today. Quote, honestly, it's like the Women's March. There's no single consolidated argument, just a loose collection of rants that obscure the main point. From a 16-year-old high school girl, quote, I was planning on not participating in the walkout. I do not see the point in leaving class to simply walk outside, stand and talk with peers for 17 minutes, and return to class. The act of walking out of class to protest school violence does not seem to have a target audience, even though they may have a news crew. It is doubtful the students in Florida will see the actions of our school's walkout as a stand with solidarity. I also support the Second Amendment, and I see this walkout as another opportunity for students and their parents to attack that amendment and my support again and my opposition to gun control. I do see that my refusal to participate may be seen as unsympathetic or cruel. My brother, who's a freshman, is being pressured in class to participate. From a 17-year-old high school student, tomorrow my school is having a walkout at 10 a.m. for the 17 students who were killed in the Parkland, Florida shooting. The walkout, however, here at my school is not really about that. It is being promoted by an anti-gun leftist political agenda that I just don't and can't support, especially using the 17 kids that were my age as a platform. I was wondering what you would say to people who want to call me insensitive and a terrible person. I mean, my initial response to that is anybody who calls you insensitive and a terrible person because you disagree on political matters is insensitive and a terrible person. Okay, here's from another 17-year-old high school student. The reason I'm emailing is because my school is having a walkout on March 14th. They say in an email that this walkout is to advocate for gun reform, but they also say that we are walking to honor the victims of the Parkland massacre. I'm in favor of walking to honor the victims, but not in favor of promoting gun reform. I feel like I have to choose between going against my political values or looking like a bad person. I need help. What do I do? I'm getting emails like this literally minute by minute now from another high schooler. My high school is participating in the walkout on Wednesday. I am unsure what to do. I'm very against gun control. I don't want to protest Congress for something they're doing right, if that makes sense. However, I don't want to be singled out by students as someone who, quote, doesn't care about the students who died. Should I participate and conform to avoid humiliation and honor the students, or should I remain in class alone? I don't know if the walkout is more about gun control or honoring the students. I mean, I could literally do this all day. Here's one that came in the last 4 minutes. Okay, hello, my name is, I'm going to bleep out his name and his class because I don't want him to get in trouble. He says, I saw your tweet about the unheard conservative students and it is very relatable. There was a walkout at my school today. A large majority of the students sat in the gym instead of walking out. This is a school of about 1,800 people. Fortunately, my school would not allow a protest, so the liberal students had to mask it as a memorial, but the motives were still very much apparent. The local media only covered the minority of the students participating in the walkout. I have a question as to how to get my own and my conservative peers' voices heard. Can you post about that or something related to that sometime, please? I'm happy to talk about it right now. This is in the last 10 minutes, okay? These are all emails from the last 10 minutes alone. I'm not even screening them. I'm just pulling them up from my mailbag right now. This guy is named Anthony. He says, Ben, first let me say I'm a big fan of the show on the website. Second, I'm a 16-year-old sophomore in Philadelphia. Our student council, in collaboration with our school administration, organized a walkout today to remember and pray for the victims of the recent shooting. However, in my opinion, this walkout quickly shifted into a walkout for gun control, similar to the walkouts occurring across the nation. We thankfully had the option to choose to stay inside, which I did. As a Catholic, I stayed inside and said a prayer for the victims of the shooting. However, I refused to go outside to protest gun control because I'm a proud Second Amendment supporter. I believe we have the constitutional right to bear arms, and therefore it shall not be infringed upon. Just thought I would share my story regarding this walkout. Again, thanks for your mail. I'm getting these things, like, they're coming in faster than I can actually read all of them, because there are tons of them coming in over and over and over. And all this, and here is the thing, right? And here is the thing. The media won't read you any of these emails because the media wants to promote this agenda. The media wants to suggest that the only reason in the world that you would not walk out with these students is because you hate the students and you don't care about the students. And by the way, we support gun control. Now, in a second, I'm going to talk about the supposed agenda of this gun control walkout. In a second, I'm going to talk about that. So let's jump right in. The Women's March is organizing this. First of all, the Women's March is organized by some of the worst people on earth. 3 of the 4 people who are Women's March co-chairs are open supporters of Louis Farrakhan, and still the Women's March has not really disciplined them. The Women's March has not demoted them. These 3 people have not come out and apologized for their support of Louis Farrakhan. The Women's March put out sort of a ridiculously vague statement about how they want to be tolerant, but they didn't go any further than that. The Women's March is a group of radicals who like to obscure their message by suggesting that you have to walk out in support of women, or you have to walk out in support of children. But here's what they're actually stumping for. So if you actually go to the Women's March website, and they have something called #Enough, National School Walkout, our demand. Okay, you can't demand anything. It's a democracy. You can elect people who do what you want, but your demands are going to fall on deaf ears because it's just you shouting at the wind with media support. Here are their demands. Quote, Demand 1, banning assault weapons in high-capacity magazines. In this country, there's a fine line between wanting to be protected and wanting to intimidate others. It's all in the title. Assault weapons don't protect, they harm. And too easily, these deadly weapons can be bought, sold, and distributed within the borders of our nation. How can we enjoy freedom if our own country condones the selling of deadly military-grade weapons which threaten our very existence? The right to bear arms should not be the right to kill. No one says you have the right to kill, you idiots. And the notion that assault weapons are even a definable category is ridiculous. You know what a military-grade arm is? Any rifle ever. Okay, those are all military grade because at some point in history, all rifles have been used for military purposes. But I guess that we're supposed to pretend that this makes any sense. Demand 2, expanding background checks to all gun sales. With 1 in 5 gun purchases being a no questions asked purchase, dangerous people have the ability to easily purchase guns from private sellers at gun shows, over the internet, and even through magazines in states that don't require background checks. Well, this is, again, a misstatement of the law. The statement is that if you're going to buy from a federally licensed firearms dealer over the internet, at a gun show or anywhere else, you have to go through a federal background check. The well-researched connection between a history of domestic violence and gun violence, combined with expanded background checks, could have prevented much of the gun violence we experience in this country. We know states that required background checks on all handgun sales or permits had 35% fewer gun deaths per capita than states without that background check requirement. I don't know where you are getting that particular statistic, and I would like to, I haven't had a chance to actually vet that statistic. That comes from the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. But I think that, the statistics do not bear out that one factor in a multifactorial analysis explains the states that have fewer gun deaths per capita. Right? That background check on handgun sales, you'd have to explain that there are a bunch of people who are buying privately and then shooting people. Again, those statistics are not available as a general rule. Demand 3, passing gun violence restraining order law. Okay, this one I actually support. Right? This one they say time and time again, we hear people commenting on how they saw it coming or always knew it would be him. Gun violence restraining orders would provide a consistent and localized system for people to provide reasonable suspicion to local courts, resulting in the expeditious removal of guns from those showing signs of potential to harm themselves or others, followed by due process. Okay, first of all, that is a wild misstatement of the law at the very end, that the due process comes after the seizure of the guns. No, the due process comes before the seizure of the guns, and then the due process continues after the seizure of the guns. Okay, but then they get to the final one, and this undermines all their others. Right? Demand 4, stop militarizing Law Enforcement Act. In 2017, there were only 14 days when police didn't kill someone. So it's important that when we talk about gun violence, we not forget state-sanctioned gun violence that disproportionately impacts black or brown communities. Black people make up 13% of the U.S. population, yet constitute 1/4 of those killed by police. Okay, non-mentioned here. Black people also constitute 1/2 of all murder victims in the United States and approximately half of all murderers in the United States. This is not a statement about race being implicitly tied with violence, but so long as you are citing race in connection with violent statistics, it's important to note that police actually statistically undershoot minority people. They don't overshoot minority people if you actually connect that with the levels of violence occurring in the minority community. This act would slow the process of turning our neighborhoods into war zones by preventing the police from having the weaponry and equipment of invading armies. So here's the hilarious part. So they want to disarm everyone, presumably leaving all of our safety in the hands of the police. And then they want to disarm the police. Who do you think is actually going to disarm all those people? Do you think that it's going to be a bunch of unarmed people who walk up to a bunch of armed people in Texas and take away their guns? Do you think that when a school shooter shows up, if the police don't have weapons, they're going to go in? We've been told by these same people that a guy with a handgun can't even go up with a guy against a guy with an AR-15. If that's the case, then why would you possibly want to disarm the cops? But this is what the Women's March is. It's a radical group, and it gets even better. I mean, at some point in here, they actually talk about how they want to oppose international violence or something like that. This is an agenda-driven march masquerading as a broad statement of sympathy for students. I hate that sort of conflation because it's just not true. Okay, in a second, I'm going to move on to Pennsylvania 18th, and I want to also give a piece of advice to all the students who are experiencing the walkouts today. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Helix Sleep. So as I've said many, many times, I am very bad at sleeping. This is particularly true when I'm on the road because I miss my Helix Sleep mattress. Helix Sleep gives you something that does not exist anywhere else, a mattress personalized to your unique preferences and sleeping style that won't set you back thousands of dollars. You go to helixsleep.com/Ben and you take their simple 2 to 3 minute sleep quiz. They build you a custom mattress, and that will be it's the best thing you've ever slept on. It really is fantastic. We had a more fantastic mattress in our room. We moved it out because the Helix Sleep mattress is better. For couples, they'll even personalize each side of the mattress. And here's the best part. You can try it for 100 nights, and if you don't love it, they will pick it up and refund you in full. Okay, the custom mattress arrives direct to your door in a week. Shipping is completely free. You unpack it from the package. It automatically inflates, and it's ready to go. Go to helixsleep.com/Ben right now. You get $50 toward your custom mattress. That's helixsleep.com/Ben. $50 toward your custom mattress. Again, helixsleep.com/Ben for $50 off your order. There's a lot of more expensive mattresses out there, and they're not as good. helixsleep.com/Ben. Make sure that it's personalized. Make sure that it is made just for you. That's what Helix does. helixsleep.com/Ben. Use that /Ben to get $50 toward your custom mattress. Plus, it lets them know that we sent you. Okay, so for all those students who are asking what they should do during this walkout, given all the propaganda that's surrounding the walkout, here is my answer. Right? My answer is that my answer is that you should go to the walkout so that you're not perceived as uncaring, and you should bring with you a sign, and the sign should say and the sign should say something like, I care about children's lives. I care about my life. Protect my life. Arm teachers, right? Protect my life. Arm law-abiding people. Protect my life. More school security, right? Put your message right out there. Show that you can do both. It's like I said at CPAC. Everybody in the room at CPAC, the vast majority of whom are Second Amendment supporters, very strong. You know, I said to them, raise your hand if you care about what happened in Parkland. Every hand goes up. And I said, raise your hand if you care about the Second Amendment. Every hand goes up. The media seem to want to believe that these two things cannot coexist. They do coexist. Show that they coexist. Go to the walkout and carry a sign saying that you stand with the Second Amendment and you stand with the kids. The media will ignore you, but at least you'll have made your point, and I think that's sort of important. Okay, so last night, the other big news, aside from the impending school walkout, was the result from the Pennsylvania 18th Congressional District. So Connor Lamb apparently has won that seat, or apparently it looks like he's going to win that seat. He is the Democrat in that district. That district went to Donald Trump by 20 points, 20. Okay, and it is flipped all the way Democrat. This makes just another data point in a data set that is really, really bad for conservatives. According to 538.com, in the 7 special elections that have taken place since 2016, there's been an average swing in favor of Democrats of 16 points. Okay, the way they're measuring that swing is they average the differences between how the constituencies in these particular districts voted and how the country overall voted in the last 2 presidential elections. So the average swing has been 16 points. There's a 31-point swing, for example, in the Alabama U.S. Senate race, in which Doug Jones ended up becoming the senator. The Democrat ended up becoming the senator. The same thing happened in Pennsylvania last night. There's a 20-point swing in that race. Okay, this is not good news for Republicans. It's actually very bad news for Republicans, pretty obviously. And Republicans are trying to make all sorts of excuses for this. They're trying to explain why this is not such a big deal. Well, one of the explanations is put forward by Kayleigh McEnany, who's a big Trump fan, a big Trump acolyte. And she says, listen, Connor Lamb won because he was basically running as a Republican.
Connor Lamb has essentially run as a Republican. He's pro-gun. He says he's personally pro-life. He says he's pro-coal. He's pro-tariff. He's anti-Nancy Pelosi. Imagine that, the Democratic candidate who's against Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader. He has made himself into essentially a Republican. So you have a Republican in name and a Republican in truth running against one another.
Okay, so, this is the argument, is that it's really not a big deal because Connor Lamb is basically a Republican. Well, Connor Lamb is not a Republican. He's a pro-abortion Democrat. He says he is personally pro-life, but he is in favor of abortion being legalized all the way across the board. He is not pro-gun control, so he opposes gun control. This is not an argument that Republicans are going to do well in 2018. It's an argument that if Democrats are not stupid and they run people tailored to their districts, they will do better. Right? If they run John Ossoff in the Georgia 6th district, if they run a Nancy Pelosi fan who's not from inside the district, they're going to lose. If they run Doug Jones, who is perceived as moderate in Alabama, even though he is not, if they run Connor Lamb, who's perceived as moderate in the Pennsylvania 18th, then they will win. So the argument here is not that Republicans are doing fine because this Democrat ran a conservative campaign. The point is a Democrat just won who caucused with Democrats in a district that no Republican has lost. No Republican has lost in 20 years, and no Republican has won by fewer than 15 points in the last 20 years. They just lost that district. Now, listen, there were some factors moving against the Republicans in this district. Tim Murphy, who was the former congressman who stepped down, he stepped down specifically because he had knocked up his mistress, and then he had told her to get an abortion. Then he had to step down. That's never good for the Republican who's going to have to step in. But in an R+20 district, that really should not make a difference. There are a lot of bad signs for Republicans here. The reason I'm saying this is not, God forbid, celebratory. I don't want Republicans to lose the House. I think it'd be terrible, as I've said many times on the show, for Republicans to lose the House, because I think the Democrats would then start passing all sorts of bills, and I think President Trump would be sorely tempted to sign a lot of those bills. I'm not sure that Trump is going to stand between the Democrats and their policy priorities if he thinks he's going to get some good headlines out of it, particularly if he can swivel to the middle. If he can give Democrats a bunch of things they want and get a bunch of good headlines, Trump likes pleasing the people who are in the room with him. So I'm very perturbed by the possibility of a Democratic Congress, but it is fairly obvious at this point that Democrats do have a major enthusiasm advantage. Again, in those 7 special elections in 2017, Democrats gained an average of 16%. Last night, they gained 20% just over 2016. So in a year, like 1 year, that district shifted by 20 points. And one of the reasons for that is obviously that Republican enthusiasm is really low. There's only 60% of the turnout that they got in 2016. Trump isn't on the ballot this time. So off-year elections are usually bad for the president in power, but there's sort of regression to the mean. That said, Trump's unpopularity doesn't help, right? Trump actually went and campaigned for Rick Saccone, didn't make one bit of difference, not one. And here's a worse statistic for Republicans. This is an R+20 district. There are 118 seats held by Republicans that Trump won by fewer than 20 points. There were closer districts than this district. Now, does that mean Republicans are going to lose 100 seats? No, it doesn't mean that. Republicans will win the vast majority of those seats. But Democrats only need to pick up 24 seats in order to win the House. So you have to say at this point that statistically speaking, in a data-driven way, they are the favorites to pick up the House, which means House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, God help us. Okay, second point here. Trump's popularity does actually matter. So there's been a lot of talk, a lot of loose talk about the idea that Trump can be as unpopular as he wants to be. Polls don't matter. His base will support him. His base will get out there and vote. His base is not big enough to win congressional elections. It just isn't. His base was not big enough to win the popular vote. And congressional elections are going to look a lot more like the popular vote than they are like the Electoral College because, again, they're within smaller districts. Right? The Electoral College means that if you win the state of Florida by one vote, you win all of their electoral votes. But congressional districts are much more localized. So that means that national polling, these sort of generic congressional ballots, they do matter. Right? If there's a generic congressional ballot that shows the Democrats are up by about 9, which is where they're saying it is right now, Democrats win back the House in a pretty easy walk. Trump's popularity is a drag here. Presidents with low popularity ratings depress turnout for their own side, and Trump has a gift for increasing turnout on the other side, at least now that Democrats realize that he could be president. The reason that the Democrats didn't show up to vote for Hillary is because Hillary was awful, but also because they believed it was a foregone conclusion that Hillary was going to win. And they believed that if they stayed home, it wouldn't make a difference. Hillary was going to walk over Trump by 10 points. But they were wrong, and I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. So Trump had better pull his plummeting popularity ratings out from the sewer. Democrats are also, as I say, running better candidates. Conor Lamb is a much better candidate than John Ossoff. Lamb ran, it is true, as a soft Republican. But, the fact that he ran as a soft Republican demonstrates that Democrats may not be quite as stupid as the intersectionality-laden politics they have been promoting would suggest, which is, devastating for Republicans. We've been hoping that Democrats are going to basically cave in on themselves. They will run the worst candidates in human history again and again and again and again. They will in some districts, but not in all districts. And you can't count on them making this many mistakes. You just can't. So, all of this is bad news. I want to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. I also want to talk about my friend Steven Crowder being suspended from Twitter and apparently from YouTube also, which is just absurd. We're going to talk about all that in just a second. But first, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com. So for $9.99 a month, you can get a subscription to dailywire.com. You get the rest of the show live. You get the rest of Klavan's show live, Knowles' show live. You get to be part of our mailbag on Fridays. So if you want your mail answered, then actually go to the mailbag by becoming a subscriber at $9.99 a month. The annual subscription comes along with this, the very greatest in tumblers, the leftist tears hot or cold tumbler. You will enjoy it. You will treasure it. It will make your morning. It will make your evening. It will make your entire life, actually. It's just that good. Check that out. $99 a year, so cheaper than the monthly subscription. Also, you just want to listen later? iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, any of those, please subscribe. Please leave us a review. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.